Hey Optimancers, Chris here. So we are now looking at the high levels for the Graviturgist Wizard. We have done a video for low-level Graviturgist Wizards and mid-level Graviturgist Wizards, and I'll put some links up above that you can go to those videos if you haven't seen them yet. But today we're just talking about levels 12 and up, and we're talking about the very high-level spells right up to 9th level spells. So let's get started. So we're going to take our wizard now to 12th level, and that's going to give us another ability score increase. And as I mentioned, we're having issues with preparation, so once again, I'm going to recommend that we increase our intelligence at this point. We're going to grab some 6th level spells, and there is one Graviturgy spell to choose, and that's Gravity Fisher, which once again is a no-brainer for me, because these spells do exactly what we want to be doing. In this case, we're manifesting a ravine of gravitational energy. It's 100 feet long and 5 feet wide. And creatures in that line make a saving throw, or they take 8d8 force damage on a failed save, or half as much on a successful one. That's not great damage for the level. But what happens is, any creature within 10 feet of the line but not within it must succeed on the saving throw, or they take the damage and they're pulled towards the line. So this is, again, one of those spells that we want to combine with something else. And this is not a concentration spell either. So we might combine it with something like Black Tentacles. We might combine it with something like Transmute Rock, and really make it so the enemies can't choose where they are on the battlefield. Unless those enemies have teleportation, they're in a lot of trouble. Next spell I'm going to take is Contingency. Contingency is a very good spell for wizards. I do not have a lot of spells that work particularly well with Contingency, because generally you want Contingency to be a spell that you're going to cast on yourself and is going to come up and protect you when things go wrong. And the spells we usually look at are ones like Dimension Door, maybe a Thunderstep, sometimes an Autoluke's Resilient Sphere. We don't have any of those spells. But we're going to take Contingency, and what we'll do is we'll go back and pick one of those spells right now. And I'm going to recommend Autoluke's Resilient Sphere here because we have a number of good things we can do with this character that don't require concentration. So being forced to use concentration on our Autoluke's Resilient Sphere isn't necessarily the end of the world. And then one more spell to take. Let's grab Mass Suggestion. Again, not a concentration spell. Affects massive numbers of creatures, and it's perfectly reasonable that we might be able to move creatures with Mass Suggestion. I suggest you all run away, might get them right into the effect you want to get them in. You might even do something like, your skin's looking dry, a nice mud bath might be exactly what you need. Now, we have a luxury here in that we probably don't need to prepare a Contingency. It's something that we're going to prepare beforehand. We also probably don't have to prepare Autoluke's Resilient Sphere. Again, we're going to prepare it when we cast our Contingency, not necessarily have it every day. So we can have our Gravity Fisher prepared, we can have our Mass Suggestion prepared, and we can have one additional spell prepared. And so that's a great chance for us to go back to 5th level and get that Wall of Force prepared. And when we're looking at our spells, we now have a 7th level spell. I would say that with a fly spell, there's a good chance you can get your entire party flying with that spell now. Bigby's Hand, as I mentioned, scales really nicely. But if we want to do something like a Gravity Fisher or Gravity Sinkhole, they scale okay, and we're going to do a little bit more damage with them. Though, again, the main point of those is to kind of combine damage with the secondary effect. But if you have a need for one of those spells and you've got a 7th level slot available, no reason not to do it. So we're going to go up to 14th level, and this is going to be an interesting level because of what happens with our subclass, because we're going to get an ability that is really very good and fits entirely with what we do with this character. So with Event Horizon, that's a 14th level feature. What it does is it kind of works like a spell. So you use it and you have to concentrate on it, and it's going to last for 1 minute. And any creature that's hostile to you, so there's no friendly fire here, that's within 30 feet, makes a strength saving throw at the start of its turn. And if they fail to save, they take 2d10 force damage, not a whole lot of damage, but its speed is reduced to 0 until the start of its next turn, so it can't move at all. And even if it makes it save, and this is what I really like about this ability, is even if it makes it save, it takes half the damage, and every foot of movement requires 2 extra feet of movement, so their movement is actually reduced by 2/3. So if you have a creature that's close to you, and you really want to mess up its movement, Event Horizon is a great way to do it, and especially if it's lots of creatures. And if they fail their save, they're really screwed, and even if they make their save, they're going to be screwed as well. We're going to get 4 additional spells at this level, and we're going to be selecting 7th level spells. There are no Graviturgy spells at this level, so we're going to be looking at other spells. Obviously, Force Cage is a good choice here. Not a concentration spell, can completely mobilize an enemy, can take an enemy out of a fight, can win fights, doesn't have a saving throw, just an insanely good spell, and definitely one we want with a wizard whose job it is to prevent creatures from moving around freely. Then we want Simulacrum because we're a wizard, and Simulacrum is maybe the best spell in the game, certainly the best spell for its level in the game, and only wizards can get it. Then I'm going to recommend Teleport. Teleport, of course, has great utility. It can also be useful in combat. And then the final spell I'm going to choose is Whirlwind. This is a concentration spell, but Whirlwind does the kind of thing that we do. So it's a concentration, lasts up to a minute, has a great range, 300 feet, and it is a 10-foot radius cylinder, and we can move it around. It'll suck up objects, it'll suck up creatures. They have to move towards the top of the effect, and note that when they fail their saving throw, we can move them an additional 5 feet. And this again is one of those abilities where a creature makes their saving throw the moment they enter the effect, and again they have to make it at the beginning of their turn. And again, this is one of those abilities where when we cast it, creatures make a saving throw. So if they fail their saving throw, we can already affect them using our Graviturgist ability. But also, creatures that enter the effect immediately make a saving throw. And this can be really useful because what we can do is we can push creatures into our Whirlwind using one of our many abilities that move creatures. And if they fail their saving throw, then they are restrained by the Whirlwind. If they make their saving throw, then they're not. So then what we do is we move the Whirlwind and then we smash them again into the Whirlwind and they have to make another save. So we can have creatures just push them into the Whirlwind again and again until they fail. And once a creature is restrained, even if they make their saving throw, then they get hurled by the effect 3d6 times 10 feet in a random direction. So we can really mess up the placement of the enemy. But you can't have it all, and you're not going to be able to prepare all of these spells. Now, Simulacrum, we're normally not going to have prepared, so that's not a problem. So we have to choose 2 of the 3 spells, Force Cage, Teleport, and Whirlwind. And I'd probably choose Force Cage, and then either Teleport or Whirlwind, depending on what I figured would more likely be needed. In this case, we'll make it our Whirlwind spell. So we're going to take our wizard to 16th level. This is now a 17th level character. And unfortunately, that means that a wizard that went straight wizard would have 9th level spells at this point. We're stuck with 8th level spells. We do get an ability score improvement. We already have a 20 intelligence, so this is the time to take a feat. And I'm just going to recommend Lucky here because we're late enough in our career that a lot of the stuff that is good at lower levels isn't all that great anymore, but Lucky remains good right to 20th level and is good for any character. Now we have one option for Graviturgy at 8th level, and that's Dark Star. And again, this is a spell that on its own doesn't look all that great to me, but for this kind of wizard, looks pretty good. Now this is a concentration spell, so unlike a lot of the other Graviturgy spells that have an effect and do damage, they often don't require concentration. This one does, but it is an ongoing effect. It lasts a minute. We're going to create a sphere, radius of 40 feet. That is a big effect. The area within the sphere is difficult terrain, so we're hampering movement. Creatures with dark vision can't see through the non-magical darkness. Non-magical light can't illuminate it. No sound can be created within or pass through the area. And because within the area no sound can be created, that means no spells with a verbal component can be cast. So we can mess up spellcasters quite a bit as well. And any creature entirely inside the sphere is immune to thunder damage. Not that that probably matters. And creatures are deafened while they're within it. Any creature that enters the area of the spell for the first time or starts its turn there makes the Constitution saving throw, and if they fail that saving throw, they take 8d10 force damage, half as much as if they succeed, and if they reach 0 hit points within the effect, they're disintegrated. And a disintegrated creature and everything it's wearing and carrying except magic items are reduced to a pile of fine gray dust. Again, this sounds like the way it's worded. If we had a polymorph creature, for example, if we took it to 0 hit points, it would be disintegrated rather than return to its original form. Now, the one thing about Dark Star is it doesn't have any effect that pulls creatures towards the center, like a lot of Graviturgy magic does. So if we're going to use this spell, it's going to be similar to the way we used Black Tentacles, the way we used Web, where we're going to create this effect and hopefully catch creatures within it. But as creatures are escaping, we're going to want to use our other Graviturgy magic to push them back in. It is not a great 8th level spell, but it does do the kind of effect that we want with this character. And again, it's not easy for creatures to escape. If they are spellcasters, it can really mess them up. And we do have lots of ways to push creatures within to the effect. Then we're also going to grab Demiplane. This is a good spell for us to have, considering that we're not going to be able to prepare all the 8th level spells we take. So this is a spell that we can have that isn't prepared, that we might use sometimes when we're not adventuring. Same thing with Clone. And then the final spell I'm going to take is Antipathy Sympathy. And I've talked about this spell before too. This is a spell, again, that we would cast before we do our adventuring. And this can allow us to attract or repel certain kinds of creatures. And we can cast it on ourselves, we can cast it on other party members, and we can have different effects on different party members. So maybe we repel dragons, well, the barbarian attracts dragons. So it's just another way that we can control the movement of enemies, and we can do so without using any spell slots while we're adventuring up to 10 days in advance. We aren't even necessarily going to have this prepared. Now, the issue is you need to know what you're going up against. You have to know what kind of creature that is going to be affected with this spell. So that really does limit it. But when we know the creature, it's exactly the kind of spell this character wants to have. So in terms of preparing, the only 8th level spell that I really think we need to have prepared is Dark Star. And that means we can go back to 7th level spells and get Teleport prepared. Now the unfortunate thing about this particular level is that 9th level spells, we don't have any, even though we have a 9th level slot. And then that means we're going to have to cast a lower level spell with that 9th level slot. And that's going to feel disappointing, because when you can otherwise cast Wish, being able to cast Fly even on several party members isn't very impressive. But I would note, if we do something like, say, a Mass Suggestion with our 9th level slot, we can have the duration last a year. So there can be uses for that. Counterspell cast with the 9th level slot will counter any spell in the game, so we can think about that. So it's not like our 9th level spell slot is going to waste, but it isn't going to feel quite the same as casting a 9th level spell. And we're going to do our final level bump here and take this wizard to 18th level. Not going to worry about 19th level. It's not really going to do a whole lot for us. 18th level is really going to tell us where this character is going to end up. We're going to get a couple spell masteries. That's going to allow us to cast 1st and 2nd level spells without preparing them. And we'll be able to cast them without using a spell slot. Having Misty Step is a pretty useful one, I find, on this one, and Shield is a pretty good one to have on this one. So that's going to free up a couple preparation slots for us. That's nice. So we're going to be picking 4 9th level spells. Again, we're not going to be preparing 4 9th level spells, but we will have 4 to pick. And the first thing I'm going to do, let's go ahead and take Wish. I'm not going to worry about preparing Wish, but let's have it in our spellbook because we're a wizard. Now, I like True Polymorph. Let's throw that on our list as well. I like Prismatic Wall, and I think Prismatic Wall is a great way to control the battlefield, which this character does. So let's throw that on there as well. And then we are going to get the best Graviturgy spell in the game, because it is 9th level spell. I don't know if it's the best spell for its level in the game, but we are going to get Ravenous Void. And this is a dramatic spell. So it is 9th level, concentration up to a minute, so we're using our concentration. The range is practically unlimited, 1,000-foot range. Now what we do is we create a 20-foot radius sphere that's the size of a fireball, and that is just of gravitational force. But the thing is any space within 100 feet of it is difficult terrain, and a creature that starts within 100 feet of the sphere, so creatures don't need to be in the sphere here. If they're within 100 feet of the sphere, they make saving throws, or they're pulled straight towards the center of the sphere, ending in an unoccupied space as close to the center as possible. So creatures may be pulled 100 feet. They may be pulled 110 feet. Correction, 120 feet, if they go right to the middle of the effect. And keep in mind that this is difficult terrain. So if a creature gets sucked to the middle, then it has to try to escape the center using half movement, and then they're going to have to make another saving throw or get pulled to the center again. Now, a creature that enters the sphere for the first time, and that will often just be them being pulled there or starts its turn there, so it might be something that maybe we cast the spell over, takes 5d10 force damage, and they're restrained until they're no longer in the sphere. Of course, it's pretty hard to get out of the sphere when you're restrained. And we can do the sphere in the air, so creatures get pulled into the air, and then they're restrained in the middle of this effect, 100 feet in the air. And then during their turn, they can make a strength check against our save DC, and if they make that strength check, then they're no longer restrained. So now they can fall 100 feet to the ground, take 100 feet of falling damage, then they're stuck in difficult terrain, and then they're going to have to fight being pulled to the center again. And a creature that goes to 0 hit points is annihilated. That's the word they use, which I assume is basically the same as being disintegrated, but a little more dramatic. So this is a pretty potent spell, especially considering the kind of character we're playing, because even if a character somehow manages to escape this effect, we have the character that can push them back in. So when it comes to preparing, what I would probably be doing here is I'm definitely going to prepare Ravenous Void, because that's the kind of character I am. And then I would probably look at Prismatic Wall, because that's a really good battlefield control spell as well. So that fills out my preparations for the entire thing. So just to go over what my final preparations are, I have Mage Hand, Mending, Minor Illusion, Mold Earth, and Sapping Sting all as cantrips. Then I have Grease, Magnify Gravity, Shield. I don't know if I'm going to be casting Grease anymore at this point, but it's not concentration, and I might not have anything else to do with my first level slot, so what the heck. Then we're going to have Levitate, Misty Step, and Web as our second level spells, Counterspell, Fly, and Pulse Wave as third level spells. We're going to have Black Tentacles, Gravity Sinkhole, and Watery Sphere as fourth level spells. Bigby's Hand, Transmute Rock, and Wall of Force as fifth level spells. Gravity Fissure, Mass Suggestion as sixth level spells. Force Cage, Teleport, and Whirlwind as seventh level spells. Dark Star as our eighth level spell. Prismatic Wall and Ravenous Void as our ninth level spells. So that is the high level build for the Graviturgist Wizard, and that's the complete build. And if you want to see the ending build, I'll put a link in the video description where you can take a look at that final character sheet. Otherwise, come back for our next video when we talk about tactics for the Graviturgist Wizard using a battle map, what we can do with other party members to make them effective, and that will be the final part of this video series. So I hope you'll join me then.